When Jim Farley, Ford's modern CEO and one of the most passionate automotive historians inside the company, publicly revealed what he called the shocking truth about the Ford Ranch Wagon, he was not referring to a scandal or a forgotten controversy. Instead, he was referring to something deeper, something that even most American car enthusiasts overlook: the fact that the Ford Ranch Wagon was not just another station wagon but the foundational vehicle that shaped family transportation in the United States decades before SUVs and crossovers ever existed. His words reopened the discussion about how this modest-looking wagon represented an engineering philosophy, a cultural shift, and a technological stepping stone that defined Ford's strategy in the post-war era. To understand the origins of the ranch wagon, it is necessary to go back to the late 1940s, when America was transitioning into a new economic reality after World War II. Soldiers were returning home, the baby boom was beginning, and families needed larger, more versatile vehicles to handle everyday life. Before that, wagons were typically wooden-bodied woodies, expensive to produce and limited in the scale Ford wanted. Ford engineers witnessed how suburbanization was exploding and how the market demanded a vehicle that could be used as a family transporter during the week and as a rugged utility machine on weekends. Jim Farley described this design philosophy as the first spark of the American multipurpose vehicle. Ford's executives saw the shift coming, and the ranch wagon became the answer. The very first ranch wagon appeared in 1952, but its roots stretched earlier. Ford had been experimenting with all-steel station wagons to replace the complicated wooden frames of the woodies. These wooden bodies required specialized craftsmen, suffered from weather damage, and had a limited lifespan. Steel represented durability, scalability, and a chance to unify production lines. Ford designers and engineers collaborated in a way that was rare for the time, mixing technical necessity with cultural intuition. The idea was not just to make a larger car but to create a lifestyle product. Farley often pointed out that Ford, in that period, was quietly building the DNA that would one day lead to the Bronco, the Explorer, and even the modern Expedition. Technically, the early ranch wagon models were based on Ford's sedan platform, which made the vehicle easier to build and maintain. This decision resulted in excellent parts compatibility, lower production costs, and a vehicle that felt familiar to buyers. Under the hood, the first examples offered Ford's dependable inline-six or the flathead V8, engines known for their simplicity, durability, and ease of repair. These engines were not about high performance but about reliability, a word Farley emphasized when talking about the truth behind the ranch wagon's purpose. Ford wanted a machine that represented the working-class American dream, something that could haul lumber for a home project, take a family to Sunday church, and still endure thousands of miles of American highways. As the 1950s progressed, the ranch wagon evolved with Ford's shifting engineering standards. In 1954, Ford introduced its new overhead valve Y-block V8 engine, a major technological leap that replaced the aging flathead. This upgrade brought smoother power delivery, better efficiency, and more torque for towing, characteristics that resonated deeply with owners who relied on the wagon as a workhorse. Jim Farley highlighted that these upgrades were not mere technical improvements but strategic steps toward creating a lineage of vehicles that would define Ford's image of dependability. The ranch wagon also played a significant cultural role. Families used it to explore newly built interstate highways, hauling camping gear, boat trailers, or homemade cargo carriers. Its large cargo area could be configured in numerous ways, and Ford capitalized on this by offering different seating layouts. This flexibility made the ranch wagon an early symbol of American adventure. As Farley admitted, the shock was not that the car had hidden secrets but that its importance had been forgotten. In many ways, the ranch wagon was the bridge between the pre-war and modern automotive world, the transition from heavy, ornamented vehicles to more purposeful, user-focused machines. From a design standpoint, Ford engineers approached the ranch wagon with an unusual balance of practicality and flair. The vehicle's body lines followed the new slab-sided style of the 1950s, with emphasis on simplicity and clean surfaces. Ford wanted a wagon that didn't look like a commercial vehicle but instead blended seamlessly into suburban life. Chrome accents, two-tone paint schemes, and refined interiors transformed what could have been a purely utilitarian vehicle into something stylish and desirable. Farley said that Ford understood the psychology of American families better than they realized at the time. The ranch wagon wasn't merely transportation, it was a statement of modern living. Another major technical element came in 1957, when Ford redesigned its full-size lineup entirely. The ranch wagon gained a longer, lower, and wider body, the design trend dominating the era. This allowed for improved stability, a roomier interior, and more engine options. By offering the powerful 292 and 312 V8 engines, Ford positioned the Rancho wagon not only as a family car but as a machine capable of real performance. Some buyers were even surprised to find how lively the wagon felt when accelerating, especially considering its size. Farley mentioned that these unexpected characteristics formed part of the shocking truth: the ranch wagon had performance potential hidden beneath its family-friendly exterior. The 1957 model also marked a shift toward more sophisticated suspension engineering. Ford introduced improvements to handling and ride quality, recognizing that wagons carried more weight and needed better stability. Engineers redesigned spring rates, shock absorbers, and rear axle geometry to give the ranch wagon a smoother, more controlled ride. This attention to mechanical refinement foreshadowed the engineering philosophy that Ford would later apply to its trucks and SUVs, reinforcing Farley's argument that the ranch wagon was the blueprint for Ford's future. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, the ranch wagon continued to evolve with the changing automotive landscape. America was entering an era of modernization, with freeway construction booming and long-distance travel becoming a national pastime. Families needed cars that could endure long trips without overheating or suffering mechanical fatigue. Ford addressed this with cooling system upgrades, stronger engines, more resistant transmission components, and improved body rigidity. These improvements were incremental but cumulative, resulting in a wagon that earned a reputation for toughness and endurance. Jim Farley's revelation highlights how internal company documents described the ranch wagon as a silent hero of the Ford lineup. Sales reports indicated that the ranch wagon consistently exceeded expectations, particularly among rural customers, contractors, and traveling families. It was a car that never tried to steal the spotlight, yet it supported Ford's financial stability during years when flashy sedans captured more media attention. Farley mentioned that the ranch wagon was one of the most underestimated engineering achievements of its time. Technically, the car continued to gain improvements throughout the 1960s. Ford introduced more advanced automatic transmissions, better braking systems, and stronger body construction. The company invested heavily in research to reduce interior noise and vibration, knowing that such improvements made long trips more comfortable. These engineering refinements were often invisible and rarely advertised, yet they represented Ford's commitment to excellence. Farley emphasized that the ranch wagon's understated nature was both its strength and the reason its legacy faded in the public eye. The cultural influence of the ranch wagon extended far beyond its production numbers. It became the family car of choice in movies, advertisements, and everyday life. It represented a simpler time when American families traveled across the country on summer vacations, the rear cargo area packed with suitcases, coolers, and folding chairs. Many people's childhood memories were shaped inside the back of a Ford Ranch wagon, making it a cultural symbol even though its name rarely appears in lists of iconic cars. The transition into the late 1960s and early 1970s marked another turning point. The rise of muscle cars, changing tastes, and growing environmental regulations began to shift the automotive market. But even in this climate, the ranch wagon continued to serve as Ford's dependable workhorse. It adapted with new emission systems, safety equipment, and redesigned body structures. Engineers refined the chassis to handle heavier engines and strengthened the frame to meet evolving safety standards. These enhancements revealed the platform's versatility, confirming Farley's belief that the ranch wagon was engineered with remarkable foresight. At the technical level, many mechanics admired the ranch wagon for its ease of maintenance. The spacious engine bay, standardized components, and robust construction made it a favorite among repair shops. Ford intentionally designed the vehicle to be service-friendly, understanding that a family car should not become a financial burden. This philosophy mirrored Ford's working-class values, something Farley deeply respects and often highlights as part of Ford's heritage. By the time the 1970s arrived, the Ranch Wagon had already cemented itself as one of Ford's longest-running wagon lines. Although the rise of vans and early SUVs began to overshadow the traditional station wagon market, the Ranch Wagon remained important for Ford's engineering development. Many suspension, powertrain, and durability tests conducted on the Ranch Wagon platforms directly contributed to the engineering foundation of later Ford models like the Bronco, LTD wagons, and eventually the Explorer decades later. Jim Farley's shocking truth was simply that the Ranch Wagon was not just a family car but a revolutionary vehicle whose engineering DNA shaped Ford's future far more than anyone remembers today. He described it as the ancestor of the American family adventure vehicle, a machine that blended practicality, durability, cultural identity, and technical innovation in a way that influenced generations. As the Ranch Wagon entered the 1970s, Ford faced a changing world that would test every automaker's adaptability. Environmental concerns, fuel regulations, rising insurance costs, and shifting consumer priorities reshaped the American automotive market. Yet the Ranch Wagon persisted, evolving quietly, absorbing every new requirement while keeping its fundamental character intact. Jim Farley often emphasized that one of the most impressive truths about the Ranch Wagon was its ability to adapt without losing its original identity. It remained a tool for families, workers, travelers, and communities, a constant presence in an era of rapid transformation. To meet new safety regulations, Ford engineers strengthened the wagon's body structure, reinforced door beams, and redesigned the front end to absorb more impact energy. These upgrades required substantial re-engineering beneath the skin, even if the exterior design seemed familiar to customers. At the same time, Ford introduced updated suspension components to improve handling under heavier loads, reflecting the company's commitment to maintaining the wagon's utility. The engineering teams worked to ensure that the Ranch Wagon could continue hauling cargo, towing trailers, and navigating long-distance travel across America's developing interstate network. Farley later pointed out that these structural improvements were foundational for Ford's future large vehicle architecture. Under the hood, the Ranch Wagon received Ford's newer generation of engines like the 351 Windsor, the 400 cubic-inch V8, and later the 460 V8. These engines delivered strong low-end torque, ideal for towing and hauling. Even as fuel economy regulations tightened, Ford continued refining carburation, ignition timing, and emission systems to balance power and efficiency. Farley noted that Ford's engineers often saw the Ranch Wagon as the most revealing platform for testing these upgrades, because families demanded reliability above all else. A failure in a wagon was not simply an inconvenience, it disrupted daily life, long trips, and weekend responsibilities. The Ranch Wagon therefore became a testbed for technologies that Ford would later deploy across its truck and full-size car lines. Inside the vehicle, comfort became increasingly important. Families were spending more time on the road, and Ford responded by improving interior materials, sound insulation, seating ergonomics, and optional equipment. Air conditioning became more efficient, heater cores more durable, and the dashboard layout gained more intuitive controls. Features like power windows, power steering, and advanced radio systems became common options. These upgrades reflected a shift in American expectations. Even utilitarian vehicles needed to offer comfort and convenience. Farley noted that these changes mirror the evolution of modern SUVs, which blend rugged functionality with luxury, another reason he believed the Ranch Wagon was the true ancestor of Ford's modern family vehicles. By the mid-1970s, the Ranch Wagon shared much of its architecture with Ford's LTD line, a sign of how the wagon evolved into a more refined platform. It was larger, heavier, and more comfortable, yet still preserved the practicality that defined its origins. The cargo area remained massive, capable of transporting everything from furniture to construction tools, bicycles, or camping equipment. Many families across the United States relied on these wagons for vacations to national parks, cross-country moves, or everyday school runs. Jim Farley remarked that the Ranch Wagon was more than a car, it was a family member, a description that resonated with countless owners who felt the same connection. Technically, the Ranch Wagon benefited from Ford's investment in manufacturing efficiency during the 1970s. The company introduced new welding techniques, improved rust protection, and more precise panel stamping. These advancements made the vehicle more durable and less prone to corrosion, a key issue for wagons exposed to harsh weather and heavy use. Farley revealed that internal Ford reports praised the Ranch Wagon's structural longevity, noting that many units stayed on the road far longer than expected. This durability became part of the wagon's reputation, especially in rural regions where reliability and toughness mattered more than style. Despite these strengths, the late 1970s and early 1980s brought challenges. The oil crisis reshaped consumer preferences, pushing buyers toward smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles. Station wagons, especially large, full-size models like the Ranch Wagon, declined in popularity. But Ford still saw value in keeping the Ranch Wagon alive, knowing it represented a loyal customer base. Even as compact and mid-size wagons grew more common, the Ranch Wagon remained the dependable option for families needing maximum space and towing capacity. Ford continued updating the wagon with incremental improvements, better catalytic converters, redesigned bumpers, updated transmissions like the C6 automatic, and improved cooling systems to reduce overheating under heavy loads. Farley noted that these upgrades preserved the wagon's technical relevance even as the market evolved. The Ranch Wagon may not have been glamorous, but it was engineered with care and sustained through thoughtful adaptation. By the early 1980s, however, a new automotive era was emerging. Minivans were rising in popularity, and SUVs, still in their early stages, were beginning to attract buyers seeking versatility combined with a higher driving position. Models like the Ford Bronco and later the Explorer would eventually dominate this new segment. Farley explained that Ford's engineers recognized how customer needs were shifting, and though the Ranch Wagon had served faithfully for decades, its time was coming to an end. Yet even in its final years, it retained much of its original philosophy: room for families, strength for work, and durability for everyday life. When the last Ford Ranch Wagon rolled off the line, it marked the end of an era. But Farley's shocking truth was that the wagon's legacy never went away. It simply evolved. The engineering lessons learned from the Ranch Wagon directly influenced the development of Ford's modern SUVs. From frame construction techniques to suspension geometry, from interior ergonomics to engine reliability, the DNA of the Ranch Wagon lived on. Farley described it as the spiritual grandfather of the Explorer, a connection that changed how many people viewed Ford's engineering history. The Ranch Wagon was not a forgotten relic, it was the root of an entire category. Farley highlighted internal records showing that Ford's engineers often referenced Ranch Wagon durability tests when designing the earliest SUV prototypes. The ability to handle mixed-use driving, family transport, cargo hauling, long-distance comfort, was central to both vehicle types. Even Ford's approach to customer research, analyzing how families used interior space and what features they valued, originated during the Ranch Wagon studies of the 1950s and 1960s. In other words, the wagon shaped not only technical development but the company's entire product strategy for future generations. From a cultural standpoint, the Ranch Wagon became a symbol of American life in the post-war decades. It appeared in countless photographs, movies, and personal memories. Road trips, picnics, school activities, vacations, all became part of the Ranch Wagon story. Farley mentioned that Ford archivists discovered thousands of letters from owners praising the wagon's role in their lives, often describing it as the most reliable companion they ever owned. These emotional connections gave the vehicle a sentimental value that extended far beyond its mechanical attributes. Technically, the vehicle also represented a milestone in the use of all-steel body construction for wagons. Ford's decision to abandon wood in favor of steel-enabled mass production, improved structural rigidity, and simplified maintenance. This shift influenced the entire industry. Competitors followed Ford's lead, recognizing the efficiency and practicality of steel-bodied wagons. Farley stressed that this move was one of the most important yet underappreciated engineering transitions in Ford's history. As automotive technology evolved, the Ranch Wagon continued serving as an engineering template long after its production stopped. Ford used the lessons learned from suspension tuning, load distribution, and drivetrain durability to develop more advanced systems for later decades. Even the modern unibody crossover owes a conceptual debt to the Ranch Wagon, as its design prioritizes interior volume, family usability, and multipurpose versatility, principles the wagon pioneered. Farley summarized the shocking truth with one final point: the Ranch Wagon was more influential than many of Ford's most celebrated models. While Mustangs and Thunderbirds captured the public's imagination, the Ranch Wagon quietly shaped Ford's entire approach to practical transportation. It supported American families for generations, influenced engineering philosophies, and laid the groundwork for the incredibly successful SUV era. Without the Ranch Wagon, Farley argued, Ford would not be the company it is today. In the end, the Ranch Wagon represents something timeless: the idea that a vehicle does not need to be flashy or aggressive to be fundamentally important. Its strength came from its purpose, its reliability, and its ability to adapt. It helped define the way Americans traveled, worked, and lived. And thanks to Jim Farley's revelation, its legacy is now recognized and appreciated as a crucial chapter in Ford's story.